Good morning and good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today. I would now like to introduce our speakers today. First of all, Chris Turner. Chris is the founder and CEO of Business Advantage. He's based in our headquarters in the UK, just outside of London. Chris has over 30 years of sales, marketing, and management experience, including extensive international experience working in and with clients across Europe, the Americas, and Asia Pacific. And then Nicola Mansfield. Nicola is our Director of Market and Competitor Analysis at Business Advantage. And Nicola has worked for Business Advantage for 13 years, and she specializes in multiple method market research and competitor analysis. So without anything further, I'd like to hand over to you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Bill. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. May I add my welcome to each of you for attending this webinar on CAD trends for 2015 and beyond. And thank you also for investing your time. As Bill has mentioned, we'd just like to stress that the information used in this webinar is part of a larger report on CAD trends, and it can be downloaded from our website, and we will provide a link to every attendee after the webinar. So today we're going to look at a brief background to the research, the why, the how, the when, etc. We're going to provide a summary of some of the key trends, and then Nicola is going to look at some of the trends in more detail for us. We then have another section of the report, which is actually it's bigger, but today we're just going to look at two topics: CAD hardware usage and sources of information. And then finally, as Bill has mentioned, we've got a question and answer session which will conclude our webinar today. So really, our webinar is looking to the future. It compares trends from a previous survey we did last year and with this year's survey, and we've asked people moving forward over the next 3 to 5 years. So our aim really is to assist you in your future planning, in looking and monitoring trends in the CAD market. A Business Advantage, it's an area that we specialize in. Over the past 23 years, we've carried out over 600 projects in the CAD, CAM, CAE, PDM, PLM space. And that's been a wide range of types of projects in market research, data analysis, and consulting work. This particular study is an online study and was carried out at the end of 2014. We have 635 responses from CAD users and managers, decision makers, across a wide range of company sizes, industry sectors, and of course on a global basis. It's the second wave, and the methodology and the questionnaire are very similar to the previous year to ensure that we have a true year-on-year comparison on the results. So we do look forward to your feedback. Please feel free to comment your views on trends, how you see the market developing. We'd be very happy to interact with you. And we also have the ability to dig much deeper into the data. So if you do have particular questions and you want to look at things by different industry segments or size of company, or perhaps the type or brand of software used for your own company or for other companies, please make us aware of that, and we'll be happy to look at your needs. So we've looked at 15 key CAD trends in this study, and we're going to look at them in summary now. We've looked at them in 3 basic ways, if you will. Awareness, this is prompted awareness. We ask people, which of the following leading trends are you familiar with or have you heard of? The perceived importance, thinking about an individual's company, their core business functions. To what extent do you see each of these as an important trend to your company? And a rating scale of 1 to 10 was used. And then the current and future usage. So are you using this technology now, and do you plan to use in the next 12 and then the next 3 to 5 years? So a little bit more about the survey audience. So looking at the left-hand side of the screen with our 635 overall respondents, we can see that we've got pretty much an even split between those responding from EMEA and North America, while about 19% from APAC. And 7 out of 10 of respondents come from SMEs or SMBs, small, medium-sized businesses or enterprises. And we've defined that here as small is up to 50 employees and medium is 50 to 1,000. So the large companies are over 1,000 employees. If we move to the right of the screen, you can see quite clearly the job title, the respondent's profile. The managers, about a third of the sample, those responding are technical managers, so CAD, engineering, design, technical project managers. Then we've got 42% of those responding are designers and engineers, and then as you can see, some executive management, some IT management, and then some other respondents. And by sector, you can see that manufacturing and AEC account for nearly 2/3 of the sample, manufacturing on 33 and AEC on 30, and then broken down in 4 or 5 other industry segments in the graph there. Okay, so our first section, as I mentioned, we're going to look at some of the trends in overview, and then Nicola is going to go into more detail on some of the trends that we've highlighted. So our first snapshot looks at the awareness and current usage of these particular technologies. And you can see quite clearly here the awareness for particular trends and their usage. And we've also put in an adoption ratio. And the adoption ratio is the usage as a proportion of those aware of a trend. And this helps us to understand where awareness does and does not lead to usage of a particular technology. And perhaps one of the easiest things to do would be just to take an example here. If we look at solid modeling, 3D modeling on the left-hand side of the screen, we can see that the usage is 77% and the awareness is 88%. If we divide one into the other, we have an adoption ratio of 87.5%. And the line shows that for each of the technologies. If we move along, we can see that in the dotted line, pretty much in the middle of the screen, slightly to the right of the screen, if we look to the left of that, these are trends with above average adoption, i.e. awareness here has translated to usage. While on the right-hand side of the screen, these are trends with below average adoption, and awareness alone has not been sufficient to drive usage. And you can see there are a couple of trends there on the right-hand side. 3D printing, for example, has a very high awareness level, but at the moment quite a low usage level. But Nicola will talk about that, and we can see the growth that has taken place in the use of 3D printing and planned for the future. And also cloud-based CAD, the awareness is growing quite rapidly, but those that are actually using cloud-based CAD has remained relatively stable over the last year, but will show good growth in the future. So looking at awareness now over time, so from the report, the survey we did last year, 2014 and 2015, we can see that all trends have increased awareness. The market has become more aware of these technologies or trends over the last year. I think as economies have improved in some areas of the world, and we've seen an increase in investment, business has become more competitive, companies desire to improve their performance, there's an increased knowledge of technologies and thus an increase of awareness as people seek to find ways of improving their business performance. So looking at the increase in usage over time, we've plotted here against the previous year usage of the various trends or technologies. And as I mentioned, with some encouraging signs of economic recovery in various areas of the world, CAD users are typically increasing their usage, they're increasing their investment in technology. So almost in most of the trends, there is an increase in usage over 2014, but the exceptions occur. If we look at the right-hand side, open source CAD, the usage of open source CAD actually declined just by 1 percentage point, 2014, 2015, and also in big data applications, which was a very small part of the sample we're using big data applications, but that has declined slightly, while pay-as-you-go CAD has remained the same. As we touched on earlier, we asked people about the importance of these trends or technologies to their business. And we wanted to understand this, and so we've asked people to rate the importance of these trends to their business out of 10, where 1 is not important and 10 is vitally important. And then the average or mean scores were used to construct this pyramid, which showed the rank order of importance to the business. Trends with the highest mean score are at the top, and you can see quite clearly 3D modeling, PDM, simulation, and PLM form the 4 most important trends to business at this time. And while some trends are much more important to different sectors, BIM obviously in the AEC space, and we go into more detail of these as we go through the various trends or some of the trends in a bit more detail. So this chart looks at the importance ranking over time. So we asked the same question last year as this year. We have one new trend, which is augmented or virtual reality or reality computing. It's called by different names by different companies. And so that's a new trend that we've asked about this year. But all the other trends we asked about last year, and you can see the 4 most important trends have remained the same. 3D modeling, PDM, simulation, and PLM, there is no change. You can see clearly with the up arrows and the down arrows particular trends that have reduced or increased in importance year on year. I think one thing that surprised us a little bit as we looked at this was BIM was a trend that declined in importance a little this year, while advanced real-time rendering and 3D printing, no particular surprise there, increased in importance year on year. So the next thing we wanted to look at, having established patterns of usage and asked individuals and companies to rate the importance of these trends, was to plot these in this matrix. So along the bottom, we're looking at importance. On the left-hand side, low importance moving to high importance. And on the vertical axis, we have low usage to high usage. And we can see if we go to the top right-hand quadrant that 3D modeling continues to be the leading trend or technology that is used and also rates in importance by far. But we do have trends which are moving up and have moved up this past year, particularly simulation and PDM and to some extent PLM. If we now go to the bottom right quadrant, we've called these trailing trends. They are at the moment rated as having a higher importance, but their usage is still relatively modest. If we go to the left-hand side of the model, the top left-hand quadrant, we've called these emerging, and again, although relatively low usage at the moment, but with increasing importance, is 3D printing. And then there are a number of trends which we've described as niche at the current time, because users are saying that the usage of these technologies is low, and at the present time the importance that they're attaching to these is relatively low as well. We find this particular chart very interesting because it does look to the future. We've put the current usage as a baseline, and then we have tracked or plotted the additional usage that's planned within 1 year, and then the additional usage over a 3 to 5 year period. And you can see, very interestingly here in the boxes, that mobile access to CAD and 3D printing, so where the lines are the furthest apart, it shows the greatest opportunity for growth. And these are bigger opportunities, obviously, for the vendor community with the needs that companies are expressing, that they plan to invest in these particular technologies. And also to the right of the screen, you can see cloud-based CAD, that the strong growth is shown in that area, particularly in AEC, which Nicola will go on to talk about a little more in a moment. But an interesting graph, we feel, that shows quite clearly the opportunities for growth that exist with these trends. So I'm now very pleased to hand over to Nicola, who's going to examine 10 of these most important trends in more detail for us. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So the first trend that we're going to look at in more detail is 3D modeling. This was ranked as highest in terms of importance. It was 8.5 out of 10. That's importance to the business. And just to give some explanation about the way that the data is presented on the next few slides. The first bar on the left shows the current usage as it stood in 2014 when we started to monitor the trend. The second bar shows the current usage as it stands in 2015. So you can see that in 2014, 64% of our sample were using 3D modeling. And this year, in 2015, it's increased to 77%. The arrow between the two bars shows the predicted 1 year percentage increase in usage, and whether or not this was exceeded, met, or not achieved. So in this case, last year, 64% were using 3D models. There was an increase of 8% predicted, but the actual increase was actually much higher at 20%. Going forward, the future predicted growth potential is now seen as more limited, and the majority of our sample are already using some form of 3D modeling. The third and fourth bars show predicted usage in 1 year and then in 3 to 5 years' time. And again, the arrows between them show the predicted percentage increase in usage. We still feel there's an opportunity for vendors among small companies within 3D modeling. So small companies are 1 to 50 employees, and they are less likely currently to be using any kind of 3D model. Whilst manufacturing companies are currently more likely to use 3D modeling, the growth of 3D modeling in the AEC sector is actually predicted to be up to 4 times higher than manufacturing over the next year, and certainly in 3 to 5 years, the longer term. The second trend that we thought was quite interesting was product data management. And in this year, it achieved an importance score of 7.4 out of 10, an increase from last year when it was rated as 6.9 out of 10. The predicted increase in usage from 2014 to 15 was 21%, and in fact, our survey shows an increase of 47%, so more than double the predicted increase. We see good future predicted growth potential in this area of PDM in the next 12 months, and there are some differences by sector. Throughout the trends we've analysed according to sector and also geography. So in this case, manufacturing, we're anticipating 18% growth, and within the AEC sector, 25% growth is anticipated. Currently, there's significantly lower usage in AEC and particularly government than any other sector. And not surprisingly, the manufacturing sector will continue to dominate the usage of PDM. Although AEC usage of PDM is predicted to almost double in the next 3 to 5 years, This is from a low base level and will still fall significantly behind usage in the manufacturing sector, which is actually predicted to go by almost a third in the next 3 to 5 years. One of the more interesting trends, I think, was simulation. And here we defined simulation as the use of a CAD model during the design process to predict real-world behavior performance of that design, and usually with CAE or computer-aided engineering software. We've seen a small increase in the importance rating of this trend since 2014, which is 6.5 out of 10, and it's now increased to 6.7. So we see this as a growth area in today's market with high importance and higher than average usage. The predicted usage, the predicted increase in usage from 2014 to 15 was 13%, but actually the survey showed results of an increase of 29% overall. The usage of simulation seen mostly for design optimization, design validation, or mechanical simulation. And the main drivers for simulation tools include things like ease of use, and for less experienced designers, this would be a key driver encouraging additional use of simulation software, and that represents about 52% of our sample. Cost reduction was also important. One of the key things is the provision of an expert support service for usage guidance is generally expected as part of the package, and this is seen as a key area really where simulation solution vendors can add real value. The manufacturing sector is predicted to rise by 13% in the longer term, 3 to 5 years. AEC's usage is predicted to grow by almost 60% in the same time frame, but it's an absolute level of usage, so it's still likely to be half of that seen in the manufacturing sector. Product Lifecycle Management, or PLM. Last year we talked about the need to educate the market on PLM solutions, and it does seem that awareness of PLM solutions has increased since 2014. Last year, it was about 31% of the sample were aware of the term, and this year that's increased to 46% of the sample. Predicted increase in usage from 2014 to 2015 was 20%, but in fact we've seen an increase of double that, 40% amongst our respondents. Not surprisingly, there's a higher usage amongst larger companies, about 38%. Medium companies represented about 19%, and small, 8%. Interestingly, there were 3 main vendors that came out top for PLM. Siemens, Teamcenter, PTC Windchill, and also Dassault Solutions were the main products that were mentioned as being used. And last year, interestingly, we predicted that Siemens users were indicating a likelihood to adopt PLM solution, particularly in the process and power sector. And it does seem that Siemens actually overall has overtaken PTC in this sample. The numbers are relatively small in the process and power sector, but it does seem to be an indication that there has been an increase in the number of users in process and power who use Siemens. Similar to last year, the perceived benefits of PLM solutions are things like savings on design time, which was 57% compared to 48% last year, and also design improvements. This year it's 52% compared to 48%. So these messages are clearly having resonance with users. Faster time to market and also cost savings are also important. Last year there were also some regional variations that we noted, with higher usage of PLM in the US. And this year we've actually seen more of an even spread by region, with slightly higher usage in EMEA. Another interesting area was concurrent engineering. And we provided a definition within the survey of what we meant by concurrent engineering. And this was multiple users working on a single model in real time. The importance attributed to this trend has increased from 5.9 last year up to 6.4 in this year's survey. The predicted increase from 2014 to 15 was 33%. In fact, we saw an increase of 58%. We can see high usage amongst medium-sized companies, which is about 23%, followed by smaller companies, about 13%. There's certainly high predicted usage in the short term, which is the next 12 months, for the larger organizations. And currently usage is higher in North America, 24%, followed by EMEA, 16%, and APAC, 12%. And related to concurrent engineering is the need to collaborate. And we also asked about collaboration tools that are currently used in the market. In 2014, over half the respondents either didn't use them or were not aware of collaboration software. it's about 54%, but this year it represents about 45% who are not aware of it. 33%, about a third, don't actually use it, and 12% had never heard of it. There's still a need to educate the market on collaboration tools, but those most frequently mentioned are PTC Windchill, Design Review, Teamcenter, Navisworks, Vault, and ProjectWise. Now, as Chris mentioned, there's some changes with building information modeling. Here is an importance ratio of 6.1, which was actually a decline from last year of 6.4. We predicted an increase from 2014 to 15 of 33%. In fact, the increase was only 17%, which was a particular surprise in the UK, where there's been some moves by government initiative to introduce level 2 BIM for all government construction projects, which has to be implemented by next year, 2016. The level of importance of BIM is certainly perceived to be higher in the UK and German markets, but it's an interesting trend to monitor. In the next year, we predict growth of 18% in the AEC sector, and over the longer term, 3 to 5 years, the usage of BIM in the AEC sector is predicted to grow by about 45%. Benefits of using BIM are seen as design improvement, 69% this year, an increase from 59% last year, savings on design time, cost savings, as well as faster response to market. And it was really the faster response to market that has declined over the last year. The next trend we looked at was mobile access to CAD, and this can apply to laptops, tablets, along with smartphones. There was a slight increase in importance rating here attributed to this trend. It increased from 5.8 to 5.9 this year. And the predicted increase in usage from 2014 to 15 was about 48%. In fact, the increase was just 5%. Current usage is actually significantly higher in North America, about 26%, also than APAC, which was 17%. But in the long term, the predicted growth is more likely to come from APAC. The growth in the future of use of tablets is likely to be greatest in EMEA, and in particular in the AEC sector. An increased usage of desktop workstations is predicted in the APAC region and the Americas going forward, particularly as the new lower-cost workstations become available. "3D printing was the next one we looked at, and although this has a below-average importance rating of 4.6, it's actually increased from last year when it was 3.9. Awareness of 3D printing, as Chris mentioned, has certainly increased to 74% compared to 66% last year. And the predicted increase in usage was 53%. In fact, we saw slightly less than that, about 47%. So it almost met the high growth prediction. But looking ahead 3 to 5 years, we're anticipating growth of 104%. At Business Advantage, we've recently conducted a number of studies in this space, and we know particularly that brand recognition is very low, and there's a real opportunity to build market share for 3D printer vendors here. And in this study, half of those using 3D printing were unable to name their brand. But of those that were, 1 in 5, 20% were using Stratasys, and 1 in 10 were using either MakerBot, 3D Systems, or Cubify. The benefits of 3D printing are seen as design improvements, that's 66%, savings on design time, 48%, and cost savings, 24%, as well as faster response times to market. Finally, we're looking at cloud-based CAD, which has a low importance rating of 4.0, but slightly raised compared to last year when it was rated at 3.7. We didn't provide a definition for cloud-based applications in the survey, but what we mean here is internet-based computing, where services such as server, storage, and applications are delivered to an organization's computers and devices through the internet. So this can include both on-premise and software as a service. The increase in usage from 2014 to 15 was 14%, so growth has been slower than anticipated. In the longer term, based on this survey, significant growth is predicted in this space in both the manufacturing and the AEC sector. And the benefits associated with cloud-based CAD are really higher mobility, about 66%, ease of updating software, which is just under half, cost reductions, and increased storage capacity. And again, from many of the studies we've conducted recently at Business Advantage, we know that things like security issues are the main barrier to adoption of CAD in the cloud solutions. And it's this fear really that CAD-based solution vendors need to address in order to achieve this high growth potential. So I'm now going to hand over to Chris, who will take you through more information on CAD hardware and information sources usage.
Thank you very much, Nicola. So as I mentioned earlier, this we're just looking at two particular trends here today. These come from quite a large section. We've looked at, for example, other topics such as the most popular software that's used, and that can be analyzed by industry segment, by geography or size of company. We looked for the first time at collaboration tools and which were the most popular tools in use. We looked at software upgrades. We looked at the value that people were receiving from software upgrades. If they noticed a drop in productivity when they started using new software, and how quickly they regained that productivity. We also looked at the use of 3D models. So there's quite a lot of information, again, that's available in the full report rather than just the brief overview that we're giving today in our webinar. But let's look at the current and future usage of hardware. As you can see, the usage on desktop workstations and desktop PCs is very similar to last year, very slight increase, not significant in desktop workstations, and a slight decrease in desktop PCs. But if we look at that over the next 3 to 5 years, we can see that the usage of those types of platforms is decreasing, and perhaps not surprisingly. Laptop PCs remain pretty stable over this period, while mobile workstations, as we can see, are growing in importance, and also virtual CAD workstations, and also tablets. Tablets is not surprising, but it's interesting. So growth was predicted in tablets last year, but was not realized, while if we look at the future, it is showing some quite strong growth of up to 19% of users will be using tablets. Mobile phones remains a very limited use of as a platform for using CAD software, which is not unsurprising, of course, but just 2% this year, and over time 4% are saying that they would use a mobile phone for CAD. So we don't feel there's anything particularly surprising in these results, but mobile workstations, tablets in particular, and virtual CAD workstations showing good growth over the next 3 to 5 years. So this is a particularly interesting area where we ask people to set out the sources of information that they use. The percentages at the end of the bar are the number of respondents using that type of source of information, and the percentage points in the bar are the number of the percentage that points increase from last year to this year. And as we look at these numbers, some have stayed the same, 1 or 2, but the vast majority of them increased. And so, again, there is an increasing drive in the market, if you will, for more information. More people are going to different sources of information and increasing their usage of different sources of information to inform themselves and educate themselves about CAD software. Some of the ones particularly to mention, online blogs, CAD forums, and other forums has shown a very large increase, 17 points increase over the year. It's now almost equal with internet search engines as a major source of information for people about CAD software. Webinars has grown by some 13 percentage points, up to 38%. Although interesting, there is a geographic difference here. Webinars are used much more in North America than they are in EMEA currently. And again, trade shows, seminars, road shows, again, are used in North America more than in EMEA, for example. So it's interesting looking at these and how different types of decision maker also use different sources. So for example, if we look at executive managers or senior level professionals, they seem to be more conservative and more traditional, and their most important source of information, or the one they use the most, are industry magazines and journals, followed by web searches, while technical managers, so CAD managers, design managers, and engineering managers, are using online blogs, CAD forums, and web searches as their most, as their first choice or their most important source of information. So just interesting difference there, and in constructing a communications campaign to different types of decision maker, then obviously different tools will be very important to consider. Now, we've presented today, as we've mentioned, an overview, and there is more data available, as we've mentioned, in the full report, which can be downloaded. And we have a lot more data, and we can also analyze the data in different ways over and above both from the webinar and the report. So if you wanted more detail by a vendor or by a geographic area or even a country in some cases, by industry or the type of decision maker, please do speak to us about that, because we'd be happy to discuss your needs and see what might be possible. So that's the conclusion of the webinar. I'd like to thank you for attending today, and from both Nicola and I, and hand back to Bill, who will help us through the question and answer session. Thank you, Bill.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. And let me just bring this up. We have had some questions come in. Sorry, I had to close my screen there for a moment. Let's see. Latest questions here. So one question was about, well, actually I had two questions on AEC. The first one was, how deeply can we drill, well, actually maybe I'll ask the other one first. Do we have any clarification of what AEC is made up of? Anything you can talk about that at kind of a high level? And then I have a secondary question I'll ask now as well, which is, how deeply can we drill down into the sub-market sectors within AEC? Can we, for example, go into civil engineering, or even break that down further into things like transportation planning and design? So what's AEC made up of, Chris, Nicola, and then how can we drill into sub-market sectors?
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, so AEC subdivides into approximately 15 different sub-segments, and we can actually go into transportation, looking at aerospace, airports, trains, railways, etc., etc. Of course, there may be some issues with sample size to draw any conclusions from that, and we'd have to look at it. But if there are specific needs, as we've mentioned, please do contact us, and we can look at that in more detail. But the short answer is yes, we can drill down into AEC or manufacturing by sub-segment, and that should be really quite possible. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's see. Next one. By the way, just before I get to the next question, a couple people have asked about slide 43. Did we miss it? And actually, we didn't. Just in terms of the timing and brevity today, we hid a couple slides that will be made available to you when we make the slide deck available for download to all of you. So there was no slide 43 presented today. We went straight from 42 to 44. So you didn't miss a slide being presented there. Let's see. Had a question just come in about how do we differentiate amongst PDM, PLM, and BIM. BIM is specific to AEC industry. Obviously, no surprise around that. It is more important to those respondents. So within AEC, that's BIM is more relevant than PDM, PLM. But how do we differentiate amongst PDM, PLM, and BIM, and the industries that they're related to most heavily?
Well, I'm not sure, Bill, that we perhaps have the full sort of thrust of that question, but we ask people their usage of different technologies, and we ask for their planned future usage, and we ask them to fulfill, really to profile themselves in terms of which industry they're in, their geographic location, size of company, so we can break down those that are using BIM in a number of different ways, and the same with PDM and PLM, of course. You know, I think it's kind of similar answer to the previous question, really, that we can do additional analysis and get a much finer take on the industry segments and sizes of companies that are using particular technologies. And we just gave a little bit of a flavor on that during the presentation. I mean, for PLM, for example, larger companies use it more. Smaller companies, I think it's only 8% of small companies that are currently using PLM. So, you know, with a lower cost offering, less complex, there's a great opportunity in the small, medium enterprise or SMB, small, medium business segment. So we can analyze it in much finer detail if needs be.
Perfect, thank you. I had two questions coming about simulation. The first one is, when we talk about simulation, do we mean kinematics and motion, or FEA, or do we mean both in the mechanical sector? And then I'll ask the second one in a moment.
Well, we had a definition, so it was just the use of a CAD model during the design process to predict real-world behavior, performance of that design, usually with CAE software. But I guess it could include both.
Yes, that was my understanding of it too, that we include both. Okay, thanks, Nicola. And the second part of that actually related to broadening the industries on it. Do we know the difference in current and future adoption of simulation within AEC versus the manufacturing industries?
We do know that. We can provide that after the webinar. I don't have it to hand at the moment, but we do know that.
Okay, perfect, good.
Yeah, the very, it's Chris again here. Just the very simple questions like that, we can just run the analysis. But if they're more complex, then it would take more time, and we can, you know, quote companies for doing additional analysis there. But I think Nicola does have some information for us.
So AEC simulation was predicted to grow by 60% in the next 3 to 5 years. Manufacturing sector is predicted to rise by 13%. Again, in the next 3 to 5 years.
Very good. Thank you. And about CAD in the cloud, with regards to CAD in the cloud, can we or do we differentiate cloud offerings by on-premise or remote software as a service in terms of where companies are looking to make their future investments?
We don't break it down, and I think as I mentioned, we don't have a definition for cloud-based CAD applications, and so this does include both on-premise and software as a service, but I think it might be something interesting to look at in the next wave of this research.
And in fact, this CAD in the cloud is an increasing area of importance in the market, and we have started some work on CAD in the cloud, and later this year we plan to publish a similar survey in that area. So we will, we'll make people aware of that, and people can download the report and again attend a webinar in relation to that. So we'll look at that in more detail. Again, I think as we've touched on a couple of times today, please do feel free if there are particular topics concerning CAD in the cloud that you're interested in. We'd be very happy to get your ideas and to incorporate those or to look at those as we put together additional research on CAD in the cloud.
Perfect, thank you. Just a kind of a general question about, do we do research in emerging markets, Brazil or India, China example?
Well, yes, the answer is yes. From our base in the UK, we recognized very early on that we would need to provide an international service, and so we've carried out work in over 100 countries worldwide now, and we regularly do work in emerging markets, or the BRIC countries, or the BRICS, or whatever acronym you want to use. China is very popular. Many of our clients wanting to do global studies, the larger clients, we include China and have carried out work specifically in China as a standalone market, as well as India, for example, and Russia. So very comfortable with both developed and emerging markets.
Thanks, Chris. Two more questions here. Can we talk at all about the margin of error within the findings? And obviously the question might be that depending on how deeply we want to drill down, or someone wants to drill down into the information, that may affect the margin of error. Is there anything you can say on margin of error, Nicola or Chris? And how high we need to remain in order for the margin of error to be be within a reasonable tolerance.
Okay, so two things really. We looked at a 95% significance level. So what that's saying is that if you conduct the same survey 19 times out of 20, you're going to get the same results. And on a survey, on a number of respondents of 630 odd, it depends. It depends on some of the questions, but typically the margin of error is plus or minus 3 or 4%. It's quite low.
Very good, thank you. And let's see. Sorry, there was one other that came in. Oh, someone just had asked if the report is available for download right now on our website, and yes, it certainly is available right now. And then the final one I had is, do we have any sort of a ranking of CAD software usage by CAD vendor or industry or country or geo within our report?
Yes, so in the main report, we have a simple ranking for CAD software used. I think the top 10 programs are listed. And we have also done the same for collaboration tools as a standard, but again, as we've mentioned, we can run custom analysis for individual clients. So if someone wants to have a breakdown of, the users by geo or by size of company, or, we can cut this in various different ways. We also have some very interesting data in terms of what's driving adoption of some of these technologies. And again, we can compare, users of brand A to brand B, in 3D modeling or in simulation, for example. There's, really, we have a lot of data. What we've shown today is really just the tip of the iceberg. And so please, in asking questions or wanting custom analysis for your companies, please let us know what you'd like. And if it's a very simple thing, we'll just run it for you and send you the table. If it's more complex, then we'll make you aware of what the time and cost would be. But we have a lot of data that we can drill down into to provide more insight.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. Well, we've got about a minute left. Are there any final questions that people want to ask? And looks like that's it. So with that, I think we will wrap up today's session. Thank you very much for your attendance, for your active participation and questions today. And please do follow up with us and ask any questions you have by email, tweet about what you learned today, and please follow up if you'd like any more detail. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a wonderful day.